Hi, my name is Kirsten Kennedy. It is March 7th, 2021. Today I will be talking about the gastric phase for our week 11 portfolio. So the gastric phase begins when the food is chewed and swallowed and then transported into the stomach. There are three general functions of the stomach. It includes storage, which stores food and regulates its passage into the small intestine. This is also where most digestion and absorption occur, and it helps regulate how much food is going into the small intestine, because if too much food goes into the small intestine, digestion cannot occur properly. So the next function is digestion, where the stomach chemically and mechanically digests food into chyme. And chyme is a soupy substance that is produced in digestion. The next function includes defense, where it protects the body by destroying bacteria or pathogens that could be ingested while eating. This can also include things stuck in the mucosal airway. The stomach also protects itself from itself because it can damage itself through its own secretions. So the first secretion I will talk about is gastrin secretions, and the G cells are what secrete gastrin, and you can find G cells deep within the gastric glands. In short reflexes, this release is stimulated by the presence of amino acids and peptides in the stomach. Short reflexes are mediated by gastrin-releasing peptides, GRP for short, and it is an ENS neurotransmitter. Cephalic reflexes, parasympathetic neurons from the vagus nerve stimulate G cells to release gastrin into the blood. Gastrin's primary action is to promote acid release by acting on parietal cells and indirectly stimulating histamine release. So the next secretion I will be talking about is acid secretions, and parietal cells secrete gastric acid into the lumen of the stomach, and parietal cells can be found deep within the gastric glands. The average amount of acid secreted into the stomach is 1 to 3 liters per day, which can make the pH as low as 1. Cytoplasmic pH of the parietal cells is around 7.2, which means hydrogen are being pumped against a gradient that is more concentrated. So the functions include release and activation of pepsin, which digests proteins, somatostatin released from D cells, which I will talk about in further slides. Hydrogen chloride denatures proteins, which breaks down disulfide and hydrogen bonds that hold proteins in tertiary structures. They help kill bacteria and inactivate salivary amylase, which is stopping carbohydrate digestion that begins within the mouth. So the next slide is a diagram that I got from the textbook, which shows parietal cell pathway for acid secretions. So this begins when hydrogen from water inside the parietal cell is pumped into the stomach lumen by the hydrogen potassium ATPase in exchange for potassium coming into the cell. Then chloride follows the electrical gradient created by the hydrogen by moving through an open chloride channel, and the result of this is secretion of hydrogen chloride by the cell. So enzyme secretions. The stomach produces two enzymes. The first is pepsin. It carries out initial digestion of proteins. This is very effective on collagen, so it's very important when digesting meats. The next point is secreted as a pepsinogen, which is an inactive enzyme secreted by chief cells, and this is stimulated by the short reflex in the ENS. The next enzyme that is secreted is gastric lipase, and this enzyme breaks down triglycerides. It is co-secreted by pepsin, and less than 1/3 of fat digestion does take place in the stomach. So paracrine secretions. Histamine is the first one, and it is secreted by enterochromaffin-like cells in response to gastrin or acetylcholine stimulation. stimulates acid secretion by combining with H2 receptors on parietal cells. H2 receptor antagonists block histamine action and are a second class of drugs to treat acid hypersecretion. The next point is intrinsic factors and proteins secreted by the same gastric parietal cells that secrete acid. This complexes with the vitamin B12, which is needed for vitamin absorption in the intestine. Somatostatin, which is a hypothalamic growth hormone inhibiting hormone, is secreted by D cells. It also shuts down acid secretion by decreasing gastrin and histamine secretion. It also inhibits pepsinogen secretion, and it is also the primary negative feedback signal for gastric secretion. So this completes my portfolio 11 on the gastric phase.